Welcome, everyone, to the Thursday, March the 11th Budget and Finance Committee meeting for the City of Franklin. We will limit physical access in the meeting room due to current limitations on public gatherings. Accommodations have been made to ensure that the public is able to participate in the meeting. The public may participate in the following ways: and watch the meeting on Franklin TV or the City of Franklin website, watch the live stream through the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts, call into the conference meeting at 1-312-626-6799 with a meeting ID of 928-2741-7918. Passcode is 278797. Callers will be unmuted and given an opportunity to comment during the meeting at specific times. Limited viewing will be available in the lobby of City Hall to watch the live video. The public may email comments and questions prior to the 1 p.m. meeting on the day of the meeting to recorder at franklintn.gov to be read aloud. The city YouTube address is youtube.com/user//City of Franklin. The city's Facebook is www.facebook.com/City of Franklin. And the website is www.franklintn.gov. I will begin the meeting with a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, are you present?
Present.
Alderman Speedy, are you present?
Present.
Alderman Shore, are you present?
Present.
And the chair is present. The next item on the agenda is consideration of resolution number 2021-34. It is a resolution declaring that the Budget and Finance Committee shall meet on March the 11th, 2021 and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location because it is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Proper motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes. And can I ask, do we know that has that been extended through April?
That I do not know. Alderman Speedy, I'm over.
The governor's order does extend through the end of April in terms of permission for electronic meetings.
Okay. Yes.
But we have been advised that it is likely not to be extended after that. So there will be action potentially required from the General Assembly if that is going to get addressed. So that's what we've heard.
We do have a yes from Alderman Peterson, Alderman Speedy. Alderman Shore, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes on that. So that does pass. Let's go to approval of minutes. Consideration of approval of minutes of the February 11th, 2021 Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Hope everyone's had a chance to look at those. Any corrections or deletions? If not, I'll also entertain a motion of approval on the minutes.
Move for approval.
Proper motion or a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Let's go to item 3, which is a consideration of draft resolution 2021-46. It is a resolution to revise the organizational chart of the Sanitation and Environmental Services Department. Jack Tucker, are you, Christine, who wants to start that out? Christine, you want to start that out?
Well, I believe that Jack is ready to.
Okay, if Jack is ready.
His request.
Okay.
Sorry, had a little trouble unmuting there. First, I'd like to quickly apologize for not being able to get this in our original budget presentation a few weeks ago. But we had a staff member that has since retired. We've had a position titled SES dispatcher for quite some time, and in actuality, we haven't had a function as a SES dispatcher for several years, especially with the advent of our new routing system and tablets that are dispatched in our equipment. This person primarily functioned as an administrative assistant, and we just never got around to changing the title on the org chart. She subsequently retired, and we just want to clean up our org chart to a classification that is more real to the position that we need. There's no money, it's the same pay grade, and there'll be no financial impact on our budget that we did propose.
So Jack, are we changing it from administrative assistant or to as administrative assistant?
To administrative assistant from
Dispatcher. Okay. Any questions of the organizational change? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion that we carry that to the full board, hopefully with approval from the committee. If there's a motion to send this to the full board for approval, I will entertain that at this time.
Move that we send this to the board.
Proper motions are a second.
Second.
Well, let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Let's go to item number 4, which is budget presentation for the streets, maintenance, traffic fleet, and street aid funds. Steve Grubb, you're up. I know you're chomping at the bits, waiting to go.
I am chomping at the bit. Can't wait. I appreciate the opportunity. As quick as I see the budget pop up here, we'll get rolling. Oh, there we go. All right. So yeah, most of y'all obviously know who I am. Most of the time I'm not called Steve Grubb. There's probably some other words y'all would use, but I am the street director. On the call with me is Kim Hammond, who is our fleet manager. And so we just wanted to get Kim some exposure here, and we'll throw her into the hard questions as we get to the fleet portion of the budget, maybe. Next slide, please. And so typical with what we'll see throughout the remainder of the day, we'll kind of run through the purpose of the department. We'll highlight some of the changes in our org chart, review the base budget request, program enhancements, and then I'll get out of your hair by summarizing a few things. So we are committed to serving selflessly alongside our brothers and sisters throughout the Public Works Department. We strive to maintain, improve, and preserve Franklin's infrastructure for its current residents and future generations. So as we look at the org chart, mostly I'd just like to highlight that we currently have 2 unbudgeted positions that we would like to restore. And one of those is the assistant director position, and the other is actually the office manager in the fleet department. So as we begin to look at the base budget for the personnel, you'll notice that we actually have one request to increase the staffing level for fiscal year 22. And we'll highlight that a little bit as we get down into the program enhancements. So as is typical, I try to use the $5,000 benchmark for highlighting movement inside the fund. And you'll notice that the utilities have decreased by about $15,000. And then we are asking for approximately $15,000 in contractual services. And that is in relationship to some Route Smart technology that we intend to implement. The property and liability costs have decreased by about $23,000, and we'll take that win every day. And the machinery and equipment, you'll see about a $10,000 movement there. And that is for the procurement of a salt spreader. Next slide, please. So one of the program enhancements I'd like to point out is the reclassification of the senior road inspector. And we're wanting to reclassify that to an infrastructure and development manager, which is a 1 pay grade increase. So when that position was originally created, back when Joe York actually had the first senior road inspector position, it was mostly as a supervisory responsibility. And it's went well beyond that these days. So that current role, it does a lot of community development. It interacts on a high degree with pretty much every other department throughout the organization: engineering, BNS, planning and sustainability. Even many of you all as aldermen would recognize that that individual deals with you all at a high level. Whenever we're looking at any type of development. So that's what that reclassification is for. So as we move to the next program and enhancement, this is for the care and maintenance of a portion of the new Mac Hatcher that is currently being constructed. It is just an element of what we currently do on the portion of Mac Hatcher from Franklin Road to Highway 96, as well as a Carruthers Parkway, Mallory Lane, Liberty Park, Liberty Parkway, Liberty Pike. And so this just helps us gear up for some of the maintenance responsibility that's coming our way. And we anticipate that to actually be possibly before the fall of the year. And as you can see in the enhancement, it actually throws a little responsibility our way to the tune of about 20 additional acres of maintenance behind curb and gutter sections, and approximately 6 miles of pedestrian trail to mow, weed eat, and clean up. Obviously, the trail's not that long, but by the time you double it both directions, you get to the 6 miles. And again, this is just it's one personnel, it's one landscape unit and some equipment, incidental equipment to gear up for that particular maintenance. So the next enhancement is a need to replace the salt storage facility roof dome. It's about a 23-year-old structure. It is the City of Franklin's original structure that was built specifically for salt storage. It is located at the Incinerator Road site. And as you can tell from the pictures, the back wall is pretty much eat out at the bottom. We've got it stabilized up top, mostly holding it in place currently. And there are some sides to that dome that are also going to need to be replaced. So we've identified about 50% of that dome that's going to have to be replaced. And we're not able to perform that work in-house, so we're going to have to hire that out this summer, hopefully. So the next program enhancement, it's a pretty healthy price tag on that leaf vacuum, but it's a far cry different than the $250,000 price tag that we would come to you all with for a single main unit. We realize that that's pretty hefty, but we do have a leaf vac that was down quite a bit throughout this last collection process, and we're going to have to get that replaced. A typical unit is about $56,000 to replace it, just to suck leaves and blow them into the back of a dump truck. This particular unit has a 30 cubic yard body, if you would, or container, and that's huge for us if we're collecting in Cool Springs and have to deliver back to the incinerator road site during peak performance. So I'll be more than happy to take any questions y'all have now, or we can save all the questions for the end as I finish up each fund. All righty, so moving forward with the traffic division, again, there's no expectation of increasing our staffing level in 22. So that is pretty minuscule at 1.1%. Next slide, please. As we look at the base budget of operations for the traffic division, it is about a 2.2% decrease. The repair and maintenance supplies has decreased mostly because the traffic calming is moving from the street traffic division to the engineering department. So here we have a 20-year-old vehicle that needs to be replaced, and it is a pickup truck, just pretty much boring, typical replacement, yearly replacement. So as we look at the fleet division budget, again, we're not asking for any increase in that level of staffing. And working with Kim really closely this year. Now, this is her second year through the budget process, but really the first year that she has been able to dive in and really give a lot of good feedback. We were able to decrease that fund by about 7.2%, or $5,815. And as you look at those, the decreases and the increases, you see that they're almost a balance. So there's just a little movement throughout that entire fund. But the repair and maintenance service decrease of $14,000 is mostly due to building maintenance, not vehicular maintenance. The repair and maintenance supplies, however, is an increase of $21,000, and that's a direct reflection of the aging fleet in the SES department. So the next program enhancement we want to lay out for you is a $199,000. It's a big ask, but really it gives us an opportunity, Kim, Mark, and I, to just continue to be able to identify an optimal replacement cycle for our citywide fleet. A few of those things that we want to consider are the maintenance costs, the fuel efficiency of a vehicle, and then, of course, the vehicle depreciation. So the city has a pretty good buying power up front because we get such a good deal on the initial cost of a vehicle. And so we just want to continue to identify and vet out, possibly looking at a third party helping us with a replacement cycle. Even Michael Walters Young had found value in that about 5 years ago, and it just wasn't the time. We feel like right now is a great time for us to try to dive into that. And with your permission, we just want to continue to vet that out. And then we would come back to the full board with any type of presentation moving forward. As we look at the state street aid, you'll see that we have an ask of about $3.8 million. That's slightly up from the 3.6 last year. And as we look at the next slide, I'd just like to kind of highlight some of those areas that we had some focus over this past year. So we'd actually resurfaced about 35 streets. That's not 35 road miles. That's would look more like about 70 road miles. But 35 streets we were able to mill and resurface inside of mostly subdivisions, but some arterial streets as well. The pavement preservation, this year we took the approach of applying a rejuvenator. We had been able to apply that rejuvenator to about 38 streets. And the intention of that rejuvenator is to catch a road that has recently been resurfaced within 5 years is the threshold. We want to chase those roads 1 to 3 years, apply the rejuvenator in the according to the industry standard to gain an additional 5 years. We've kind of went through that before, but that's what we're doing with the asphalt rejuvenator. In-house, one of the pavement preservation techniques that we're doing is the crack fill. Some of y'all have seen that throughout your development as well, in those areas that you live. You've seen city street teams that have actually been out applying that asphaltic rubberized material, and we have applied that material to about 29 streets and or 6.5 miles. But that team is actually out today, and this number was before even today's meeting. So they're taking advantage of the sun that is shining and actually out applying even more today. So that number should look more like a 12 or 13 mile number before the season ends for us. And so additionally, we had partnership with other organizations and or HOAs, and we've been able to install about 2.5 miles of sidewalk gaps and have addressed about 80 access ramps along with our major resurfacing. So as we look at our 5-year outlook, and even though I have a typo and it says street aid, I'll be the one to point that out. Up top, it's actually citywide. And so we know that we're going to have a significant increase in our maintenance, or we're going to recognize a significant increase in our landscape maintenance responsibilities as road networks like McHatcher, the Franklin Road Streetscape come to completion in the next few years. McEwen Drive, Phase 4, Liberty Pike roundabouts, all those add maintenance responsibilities to the street department. And so we'll continue to fine tune our teams to be able to respond and continue to maintain that level of service that we all expect. We anticipate that we'll continue to see some personnel have to be added to the traffic division, because with every streetscape project, anytime there's a decorative street light installed, that maintenance falls back directly to our maintenance team. And Middle Tennessee does not maintain those. So we'll continue to grow in that area. And we anticipate approximately 8 new signalized intersections to come online, which will also significantly increase our responsibilities. And so as the Southeast Corridor continues to develop and grow along the Goose Creek bypass area, we'll have to continue to fine tune our maintenance responsibilities department-wide as we see that grow. And with that, I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions that you all may have, or we can move on to the stormwater division. All righty, so, go ahead, Mr. Clyde.
No questions from me.
Okay, thank you. So as is pretty typical, Paul and I will both go through our PowerPoint presentations on this, kind of lay those out. I'll take the first part and then he'll wrap it up. So if we can just go to the slide number 3, please. So the Street Stormwater Maintenance and Inspection Division exists to ensure that the citizens of Franklin receive a properly functioning, high-quality infrastructure. We take pride in our workmanship from start to finish, and our quality control inspectors expect no less from private contractors working within city rights of way and or in new development. So our org chart going into fiscal 22 for the stormwater division is unchanged. We are not requesting any additional staffing for fiscal year 22. As we look at the base budget for operations, there is a significant increase in the operations budget. Most of that is an administrative services increase, and there's very little movement within the actual street department fund. So the one program enhancement that we are proposing this year is actually a phase 2. You all have been kind enough to help us move the phase 1 along, which is the training, which SES is currently we'll start next Monday walking through that training. So the program enhancement for the Route Smart that they're currently using, we want to install on our street sweepers. And additionally, we'll find the most benefit when we move those into the leaf vacs and our salting and plow trucks. So most of those units double up depending on the season. And so that's the purpose for the number 8, as you see, pretty typical throughout that. So what does that do for us? Again, much like with SES, it gives us a live view of where the trucks are. But that's mostly important so that our customer service staff can manage the phone system, if you would. And when a resident comes on and says, well, you bypassed my residence, then they're able to see exactly where that unit is and have conversation with the driver, because the driver would put in a note, well, I could not pick up that pile of leaves because there was a vehicle blocked, or there were sticks and other debris in the leaf pile, or it was too close to a mailbox, that sort of thing. And then, of course, the other advantage is if a unit breaks down, which is typical of like a leaf vac in the middle of a route, we're able to navigate to that location and just continue to pick up the route from there. So we really want to fine tune what we're doing, especially in our leaf collection process. So as a maintenance division, we intend to expand in a way that keeps up with developmental growth. We will continue to offer the best services possible to our vibrant community. We are committed to training and developing staff members that pay attention to the detail. And it's our desire to stand out among industry leaders for preventative maintenance. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions, or we'll turn it over to Paul.
Paul, do you want to add to that?
Yes, sir. I will continue on with the presentation. Next slide, please. So I think you've seen the outline numerous times. We'll first start by talking about the overview of what our team does for the stormwater division. Next slide, please. So our stormwater team maintains compliance with federal and state guidelines associated with stormwater runoff and pollutants. We're issued a MS4 permit, or a phase 2 municipal separate storm sewer system permit. And so our stormwater team ensures compliance with that. And that permit actually allows the city to discharge stormwater into nearby rivers and streams. Right now we have 6 full-time employees, and they do anything from, as it relates to stormwater, they do anything from construction site compliance inspections to plan review to illicit discharge detection elimination, stream assessments, and we're doing BMP inspections now, all of which are required by our permit. Next slide, please. So the personnel-based budget is a slight increase. As it relates to enhancements, we're looking for reclassification of a water quality specialist 1 to a staff engineer 2, and another water quality specialist 1 being promoted to a water quality specialist 2. These are both employees that have been with the city for numerous years, and it's time to look to move them up in the organization, and they've been performing very well. As it relates to operations, you see a decrease. Mainly, this is reducing consulting services and engineering services. historically, we've had capital projects in our budget. We've since moved those all to the capital CIP. And so that's what the main decrease is in our budget. Again, that explains this next slide, which is why we have zero in our capital base budget request for stormwater. It's all been moved to our capital investment program. We hit the 2 personnel program enhancements. The next one is 1 vehicle replacement. The vehicle replacement, fleet maintenance has historically told us after 10 years, we should look to replace those vehicles. We have a 2003 Ford Explorer that has about 60,000 miles on it. And so we'll ultimately defer that to fleet maintenance if it needs to be replaced or not. But it did meet the threshold, and they had historically recommended to replace those type of vehicles. So in summary, our stormwater division, which is about 6 people, simply oversee and ensure that we meet the minimum standards associated with federal and state guidelines. And we're happy to answer any questions as it relates to stormwater fund.
Any questions from any committee member on either the streets or the stormwater fund presentation?
Paul, is it stormwater that deals with the community rating system? Or is that a different part of engineering?
It's actually managed through our Building and Neighborhood Services Department. We do assist Shannon McCoy, who's our floodplain manager, and she really is the one that is responsible for overseeing the community rating system. But from an engineering standpoint, we will support her in review of encroachments into the floodplain or cut and fill into the floodplain or flood studies. We'll generally work with her and assist her in those reviews, but Building and Neighborhood Services generally manages that. And I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions that you may have with the community rating system.
Any other questions from any other committee member? If not, then let's go to item 6, budget presentation for the engineering and the traffic operations center. Paul, you're up on this one.
Yes, sir. And if we can go to the next slide, which basically gives an outline of what we're going to talk about. And first thing, we'll talk a little bit about the purpose of the department. Next slide, please. So you've already heard about the stormwater division of engineering. The other 3 divisions are the Development Services and Capital Projects Division and Traffic Operations Center. Our Development Services team, they essentially review and approve all the private investment of infrastructure across the city. They work closely with developers as they make their investment to try to get plans approved as quickly as possible and assist them in resolving issues and ultimately leading towards more investment in the city. We have a capital projects team that essentially their primary role is to assist us in delivering of capital projects funded by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And then our Traffic Operations Center, that we have around 120 signals. We have connectivity through our Traffic Operations Center to almost all of them. They maintain 5 really coordinated systems in the Cool Springs area, downtown, Hillsborough, Columbia Avenue, and along State Route 96. And we try to do traffic counts every 3 years. And our in-house traffic team does try to do a lot of retiming throughout the year. We also rely on consultants to help us every once in a while to retime and coordinate those. And they do an outstanding job. Next slide, please. So this is our organization chart, and you can see there's 2 assistant directors. One oversees development services and the stormwater team, and the other one oversees traffic operations and the capital projects. Next slide, please. So base budget as it relates to personnel, there are no new requests in engineering in the Traffic Operations Center. Again, we're looking to move a senior ITS specialist to an ITS project manager. And really what that individual will do is go from doing more field work to more project management of overseeing capital projects and construction. And then also look to reclassify our TOC operator to an ITS specialist, which in addition to monitoring cameras and adjusting timing as needed, they would also help more with actually maintenance of the traffic camera system, the ITS network, and troubleshooting in cabinets, along with our street department. So base budget for engineering is a slight decrease of about $9,000, and the traffic operations is a pretty big decrease down to $397,086. The big decrease is essentially in engineering services, or services that we had budgeted to assist in traffic studies around the city. We've just not historically done it, and we've changed our policy where we're really relying on the development community to do those, and we're paying our third party simply to do review of those traffic studies versus doing those ourselves. So we're actually asking for a decrease there. Next slide, please. Capital and engineering is very easy. Is $0. Within the traffic operations center, we're asking for $1,715,000, which what that includes is $715,000 for State Route 96 traffic signal improvements, which is 100% grant funded. $250,000 for the Cool Springs area adaptive traffic signal, which is 80% federal funding, 20% local, and $750,000 for ITS extension project, which is again 80% federal funding, 20% local funding. And the ITS is really providing communications from our signal systems back to our traffic operations center so that we can actively respond and monitor traffic operations in real time. So as far as program enhancements go, we have one vehicle within engineering. It's a 2008 Chevy Trailblazer that has about 50,000 miles on it. So based on what fleet maintenance has historically told us is after 10 years, we should start to budget to have those vehicles replaced. And so again, we'll rely on them to make the final determination. Within the traffic operations center, we've talked about the 2 promotional opportunities that we're requesting. We've also requested to move the traffic calming process back to engineering, and we're requesting $75,000 for that. It was in the street department's budget, and we've kind of gone back and forth, but at this point we think it's best to be in engineering, mainly because our traffic operations center and traffic team does manage the traffic calming requests that we get. And with COVID going on and everybody at home, they seem to have skyrocketed. So we do have a lot of requests pending. And really what that's used for is putting up, speed radar feedback signs, or looking to add speed bumps or speed humps into neighborhoods. And we get a lot of those requests. And we've taken a 6-year look, a 2 or 3 year look back at what we've historically spent. And this is about what we have historically spent per year. And a lot of times we ultimately end up having to rate our budget to find other areas and defer maintenance on other things because we get so many requests and are able to get neighborhood support to implement a lot of those. The enhancement number 4 is to upgrade and enhance our emergency vehicle preemption for Mallory Lane. And that's essentially the equipment necessary for the fire department to preempt the signal to make it all red or green in the direction in which they're heading to clear it out so that emergency vehicles can respond. We do the installation in the fire trucks and the emergency vehicles. We also do it with Williamson County Hospital. We work with them to install it in their ambulances. And we just recently did Highway 96. The next section of roadway that we've been asked to target is Mallory Lane. And so we generally work with our fire department to prioritize these corridors to get the preemption up and working properly. We do have one replacement vehicle. It is a 2008 Ford F-150 pickup that we're asking to have replaced. And then we're also looking to update our road impact fee study, which was done probably 5 years ago. So it's time that we reevaluate our road impact fees. And $50,000 should cover us to be able to provide that service. So next slide, please. And I think that's it. So that concludes engineering and traffic operations budget, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I've got a question, Clyde.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, on your signals, are you putting in all smart technology signals with two-way communication possibilities on them?
Yes, all of our signals are linked back to our traffic operation, and we are able to communicate with them. We are on Highway 96 through that grant that we talked about earlier, looking to put in some connected vehicle technology.
Yeah.
And we're working on that. That'll be our first corridor we've ever done. And so that's new to us, but that was a part of the grant requirement, and we're working through that. And actually, our traffic engineer has one of those smart vehicles that can communicate with it. So he's very excited and proactive in that area.
Yeah, well, I just know a little bit about that, and where this all our traffic is moving from and to, and the connected vehicle, it is one of the things that we're going to really, I think, have to look at a lot as we go forward. The more we have vehicles that are communicating with each other and with the infrastructure itself, it'll help reduce lots of issues that we might have. Those things are expensive, but I think in the long run will make a difference. So I'm glad you're doing that on 96, and I think it's something the city really needs to look at and use as often as they can going forward. So.
Yes, sir. We'll continue down that route.
Any other questions of this particular presentation from any other committee member? Paul, we thank you very much. Appreciate that. That was informative presentation. If there's no other questions, let's go to item 7, which is the Building and Neighborhood Services and Community Development Block Grant Fund. Tom Marsh, you are on the agenda.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Barnhill and committee. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon about our proposed Building and Neighborhood Services and Community Development Block Grant budget for the next fiscal year. I'm joined this afternoon by our 2 assistant directors, Alex Brown and Patrick Virrell. They will both have a chance to talk to you here in a few minutes. And there you go, the typical outline with the purpose of the department and so on, getting into the specific budget requests. Michael, if you'll go on, please. And I'll skip over the purpose of the department and go on to the organization chart. Go on to the next slide, Michael. Just as everyone knows, and you'll recall, the purpose of the department, Building and Neighborhood Services, supports safety and quality of life for the residents and visitors of the city of Franklin. And I just feel like it's easier to see how we're organized and what we do by looking at the graphic here. As you'll probably recall, we are separated into 2 large groups, the Building Services Group and the Development Services Group. On the Building Services side, we have the building inspectors and the building plan review section responsible for construction plan review and inspections for all building, plumbing, mechanical, electrical work that goes on in the city of Franklin. On the Development Services side, that is our permitting section. And also we have the zoning section and the neighborhood resources section that are responsible for enforcing the city zoning ordinance and the municipal code. Also, we have a couple of other specialists within the department. Our development services operations analyst that has been vacant for the last year, but we recently made a selection. We'll be filling that position again in the near future. And also the housing development coordinator position. You see that we have 34 full-time budgeted positions, and 2 of our full-time positions are unbudgeted and will continue to be unbudgeted for the next proposed for the next fiscal year. You'll hear in a few minutes from Alex. We're proposing some changes to job titles and some reorganizing of positions in our organization here, particularly between the zoning section there under the zoning administrator and the neighborhood resources section. And we do have a program enhancement for a new position you will hear about also, and that will be based on the street tree enforcement discussion that happened a couple of nights ago. I think that's all I've got for this section, and I will turn it over to Alex to talk to you about some of the specifics of the budget. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board. As Tom touched on with the org chart, we have 36 total positions, 34 funded, 2 unfunded currently. and we don't expect that to change in FY '22. As you see, there's a 4.7% decrease in overall personnel budget. Also, as Tom mentioned, there's going to be some talk in the next couple slides about some reclassification, movement of positions to different sections. We'll go over that in just a second. First off, our technical support 1 position is currently the incumbent. In that position, we are asking to move that person to a technical support specialist 2 position. They meet and exceed the requirements of the technical support specialist 2 position. The next few sections here, we're going to talk about the reclassification of a few jobs and moving into different areas of the org chart. First would be to reclassify 2 plans examiner 1 positions currently in our zoning section. They will stay in our zoning section. Will be retitled to zoning enforcement planner. We have the job description completed, reviewed, and the pay grade will not change. So there won't be any increased cost. It's just change in job title and a little bit of change in the job description. Next slide, please. The next section deals with reclassification of 3 separate positions. 2 of the positions are currently in our zoning section. They're zoning enforcement officers. There's 2 of those. And our neighborhood resources coordinator position, there's a typo on this top paragraph, neighborhood services coordinator. That's a neighborhood resources coordinator. But there's 3 positions in total. They sit in 2 different sections in our enforcement division. We're looking to reclassify all of those to municipal inspection officer 1 and combine those 3 positions to report to our neighborhood resources supervisor. The intent of this reclassification and move of the org chart would be to combine all of our enforcement activities under 1 section, 1 supervisor. Operationally, we have started that process. We just want to make sure it's shows on the org chart and the job descriptions match up with their job duties. So the second paragraph here deals with the creation of the municipal inspection officer 2 position in the enforcement section. This will allow for promotional opportunities in the future, for employee retention, and opportunities for if somebody stays in that role for a length of time, they can see a increase in pay and responsibility. So we think that's a good idea looking at doing that part. The last piece of our personnel request is the creation of an additional municipal inspection officer 1 position in our enforcement division. Mainly this came about based on as Tom mentioned, the street tree conversation and enforcement that was presented to the board this past Tuesday night. Also with the increased years of our housing stock age, our property maintenance request and other service requests across the city are growing by a large number. So the extra personnel will allow us to be efficient and respond to those requests in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Our base budget for operations, you see a 1.1% decrease year over year from last year to this year. Some of this was based on we evaluated each line item closely this year. We found realized some savings in the travel expenses based on current and expected travel based on the pandemic. And also we had a landscape architect certification in our department and that no longer is in our department. So we were able to realize a little bit of savings there, which is good. You'll also see in this top section here, we have 6 aging vehicles in our fleet. For BNS, they all meet the threshold for vehicle replacement. So that's pretty straightforward. And also our main large printer scanner copier that serves our department is meeting at the end of its life in this current calendar year. So we will be needing to replace that at a cost of $15,000. Next slide, please. We do not have any capital expenditures this year. Next slide. So the PERs kind of go over what we've talked about already. The total of our 6 PERs is just over $246,000. The 6 vehicle replacements we're requesting. The replacement of our large scanner copier printer, $15,000. The upgrading of the position of technical support 1 to the 2 position we feel is appropriate. And then the reclassification of the positions that we went over a minute ago. The plans examiner 1 positions to zoning enforcement planner positions, both staying in our zoning section. The reclassification of our 3 different enforcement positions currently to a standard municipal inspection officer 1 position, and then the creation of a brand new position at a cost of over $56,278. So Patrick Burrill will take the next couple slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. This afternoon, in summary, as construction trends tend to ebb and surge, currently there are numerous large-scale commercial projects, including multifamily projects, different stages of construction throughout the city. These stretch from Stream Valley all the way up through the center core, McEwen area to Carruthers West. These projects exceed 300 individual dwelling units. Although office and general commercial projects have slowed compared to recent statistics, there are a multitude of large-scale projects currently under review that are set to break ground within the next 12 to 18 months calendar year. In addition to these complex multifamily projects, single-family construction remains very strong. In addition to the new construction, there's also, as Alex had mentioned, the aging housing that require the maintenance being addressed and the needs for renovation. Next slide. So as the city grows, so do the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department. We continue to evaluate staffing, our needs as they relate to the needs of our customers and the citizens of Franklin. With more complex building techniques and materials require more attention through review. We continue to evaluate on how we can better serve our customers, both internal and external, and the citizens of Franklin. If there are any questions for this part, I'm open to answer.
Patrick, I do have one maybe question or comment. You mentioned that the, I guess, single-family unit construction is still going strong. And this is not directly related to you, but we also hear that there's an overabundance of apartments and that there's concerns about the ratios of apartments to single-family units. Are you at liberty to comment on that, or is that is that planning in the sustainability's area of comment?
That would be the latter, sir. I would not have the answers for you accurately, so I would probably defer to them.
So you would like to defer that one?
Well, and I'll just chime in a little bit
right
there. I think, Building and Neighborhood Services sees what's immediately happening. The reporting and perspective you got from planning and sustainability is probably both what's coming in the pipeline and the broader multi-year outlook of what we have seen both come through and what is expected or been approved to come through in the next several years. So it's a little different perspective. I think we're seeing pretty decent activity on both fronts. If you just look at what our inspectors are seeing and responding to, what planning's trying to give you is a little more of a 30,000 foot view or something like that, and a longer term perspective. So I think they both can be true if you see where I'm coming from.
And I'm sorry,
Tom, go ahead.
Well, I say if I would chime, just from the building and neighborhood services perspective is what we were trying to talk about with the looking ahead for the 3 to 5 year plan, the single family construction and, in terms of the demand on our time and inspection and plan review, the single family construction remains steady and strong. What we do see with the larger apartment complexes being built, that those can be rather time demanding from the perspective of the technicality of the plan review and also the inspections. So, we Patrick could chime in on this, but, we typically just for, kind of for everyone's awareness or information, if you see one of those large apartment buildings being built, our inspectors will generally try to break those down to a floor at a time in terms of doing an inspection. And they'll go out and look. So on one floor of those buildings, you may be looking at 20 to 25 apartment units. And that's just a time consuming process for the inspectors to look at all the details on those multifamily buildings that you see going up. In terms of the demand and what we expect for our staff for the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Tom.
Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
If I may chime in just briefly, because your question is great. And I appreciate the questions and the responses. Is that what and you what I'm going to say you probably realize, but I do want to emphasize that with engineering, building and neighborhood services, and the planning team, our core development services team, we respond to current development and time to market and people that want to make an investment in the community in accordance with our land use plan, our transportation plan, our master parks plan, the zoning districts. We want to do that efficiently, and that's where current engineering, current planning, and really the Building and Neighborhood Services Department helps guide that investment from the time a building permit is issued all the way through occupancy. And as you heard with Paul in the engineering department, and you'll hear with Kelly in our planning and sustainability department, while they do the same thing in helping ensure compliance on private investment in the community, we also have a section that focuses on growth and infrastructure planning that is equally, and as we're starting to see, even more so important as we maintain the quality of community people have become fond of in Franklin. So our Building and Neighborhood Services team is really where, the foundations get put in the ground and businesses and open up and families make an investment to be a part of our community.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions from any committee member, or Patrick, or Tom, or Alex, either one on the presentation? No questions. Let's go to the budget presentation for planning and sustainability. Kelly Danson-Fellow, you're listed as a sponsor on this. Kelly, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be. I am here today for Emily Wright. She's out on leave until April, and we await her return. But in the meantime, you get me for this. So here we go. Next slide, please, Michael. We're going to talk about the items on this list, starting with the purpose. Next slide. The purpose of the Planning and Sustainability Department is to strive to protect and enhance the built and natural environment by providing comprehensive vision for future growth, protection of historic and natural resources, and excellent planning services for residents and businesses of Franklin. Our department works with the Planning Commission and the board to identify and complete long-range planning initiatives and studies. We also process all sorts of development applications and consider annexation requests. And we provide assistance to the Historic Zoning Commission, the Franklin Civil War Historical Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Sustainability Commission, and several other subcommittees as part of that. Next slide, please. The Planning and Sustainability Department has 3 divisions. The Long Range Division, which handles those special projects and studies, and that's where Envision Franklin is housed, and we process plan amendments. And Mr. Barnhill, your question is really related to some of the long range initiatives that we are considering in the upcoming years. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The current planning division processes all of those development applications like rezonings, annexations, development plans, and site plans. And the third division is a mix of historic preservation, technical support, and BZA cases, so variances and appeals of administrative decision. We have 14 full-time employees in our department and 1 unbudgeted position in the long range division that we would like to incorporate back and restore at about $84,000. Next slide, please. So overall, our personnel budget is expected to increase about 1.1%, not including the restoration of the long range principal planner position. This position was in our department and it was vacated about 1.5 years ago. And because we had a number of turnovers around then, we decided to wait on that while we determined what our needs really were for the position. And then the pandemic came and then we didn't fill it a while longer. But we have several projects on the horizon where we really could use the extra staff support, talking about the Goose Creek coordinated study, an update to Envision Franklin that's part of a 5-year plan to update that. And a new joint long range growth plan that the county has initiated to look at growth, look at our UGB boundaries with all the municipalities across the county. Next slide, please. So in terms of operations, our budget goes down 0.5%. We have a number of projects underway. One that will continue into the next budget year is the Historic District Design Guidelines update. We're doing a bulk of that work in this fiscal year, so we've asked for $15,000 to continue those consultant services into the next budget year, really as a wrap up to that project. We have the National Historic Resources Inventory update for the Lewisburg Historic District. And that's a $5,000 local match for a grant to conduct that work. That's part of the requirement for us to be a certified local government as part of the National Preservation Program. We'd also like to begin the background work for a 5-year comprehensive Envision Franklin update. And that includes staff analysis and auditing of Envision Franklin today, and preparing a schedule for outreach and public engagement to have some of those community conversations about housing and quality of life and commercial uses across the board. How do we want to grow as a community? And of course, we'll have continued emphasis on continuing professional education about best practices to help our city grow in the best way that it can. Next slide. We do not have any proposed budget requests for capital this year. And we only have one program enhancement request for this year. It's the Goose Creek Coordinated Study Consulting Services at $200,000. It's really a joint effort between engineering and water and sewer and planning. So the monies would be split roughly evenly across the board. A resolution was just adopted by the board on Tuesday to authorize staff to proceed with the RFQ and hiring process for a consultant that would help us conduct the work. as you'll recall, there's just a lot of questions about how we grow in the Goose Creek area, questions related to the road alignments and sewer infrastructure, water infrastructure. Can we serve the area, and making sure that our infrastructure matches the land uses for that area. So we need to do a really coordinated study so that we grow in the right way and that we right size all of our infrastructure to create an exceptional community down there. Next slide, please. We do have a future program enhancement request anticipated for the following fiscal year. And I mentioned that a little bit with the 5-year update to Envision Franklin. So we anticipate that may be around 150,000 tentatively. And the way we've set it up so that the way we have done it with the past couple projects where staff really takes the lead on the drafting and the review and the work, and we obtain the consulting services to do graphics, do study on specific topics, and facilitate the overall public engagement part of the process. So that's how we would like to align that, where, and that new planner position will help out with all of these projects, but doing more of the technical work while the consulting services provides that additional help for us. Next slide. So the planning department has a lot of great projects that we are working on that range across the board on strategic growth and annexation practices, historic preservation, housing, transportation, transit, local mobility, all of which work together to create a long-term, vibrant economy and excellent quality of life for people. So we have a lot of projects underway and planned. The Historic District Design Guidelines update, the Goose Creek Coordinated Study. We also want to update our internal processes for plans of services review, the National Historic Resources Inventory update, our participation in the joint long-range growth plan with the county, the background work for Envision Franklin, and working with the city team and the consultant on continuing the design process for the new City Hall facility. So we have a great department, very, very strong staff, which allows us to create a lot of these really great plans for the city. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions from any committee member? If not, then we will go to budget presentation for purchasing. Brian Wilcox.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Brian Wilcox, and I'm pleased to serve as the purchasing manager for the city of Franklin. I am joined today by both of my colleagues in the purchasing office, Suzanne Ward, who is Procurement Officer 4, and Leslie Pewitt, who is Procurement Officer 2. This slide presents the topics that we'll cover in our presentation today. Next slide, please. The focus of purchasing is, in the case of Franklin, we divide the purchasing function into 2 broad categories. That which pertains to the design and or construction of new infrastructure and facilities, and that which does not. And the purchasing office focus is on the everything else category. And we leave it to the engineering department and the facilities office to handle the construction related purchasing. The mission of purchasing is first to support the city's end user departments in the policy compliant procurement of non-construction related products and services so that the city may fulfill its mission. Secondly, to strive for the city to receive maximum value for every non-construction related purchase of the city. And thirdly, to strive to preserve and enhance the public trust in the manner in which the city conducts its non-construction related purchasing. As part of the vision to help create a world in which public procurement practitioners are highly regarded members of a respected professional order, NIGP, which used to stand for National Institute of Governmental Purchasing, now goes by the moniker, the Institute for Public Procurement. NIGP has embarked on the development of public procurement principles and practices represented by the 4P logo to the right. NIGP has identified 3 pillars by which 6 values of public procurement should be directed, namely public trust, public service, and justice. And the values are accountability, ethics, impartiality, professionalism, service, and transparency. About this time in the year 2012, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen adopted the values and guiding principles of the public procurement profession, and I appreciate the board's support. So next, we're going to turn to how the purchasing office supports the other departments of the city. We think of the other departments as our clients. First, we help the departments procure the products and services they need to achieve their mission and goals, including vehicles and off-road equipment, including fire apparatus, police vehicles, dump trucks, refuse collection trucks, and the other items you see on slide 6. Also technology, such as copiers, software and hardware, the other items listed. Professional consulting and other services, such as banking and other financial services, insurance and other risk management products and services, employee benefits, and the other services that are listed. Facility and field equipment, including two-way radio hardware, self-contained breathing apparatus, and the other items listed. Supplies. It's hard to believe today, but just a few weeks ago, we needed road salt in a big way. That's a good example in this category. Office supplies. Purchasing also supports other departments in other ways, namely promoting and maintaining open lines of communication with designated representatives of each department, identifying, describing, and promoting the use of best purchasing practices to be followed by city departments, and by representing the city at area vendor outreach events and functioning as a centralized point of contact for suppliers, service providers, and contractors that seek to do business with the city. In addition, in the field of public procurement, our office strives to stay abreast of new laws and evolving best practices. We strive to pursue professional development, and we strive to promote and support the profession. We also administer the city's purchasing card program. In this chart, you see in the axis on the left, the value of purchasing card spend for each of the last several calendar years, and those are represented by the blue bar chart. And then in the gold on the gold line is the value of the rebate that the city has earned each of the last several years. And you may notice that it jumps around a little bit. It has generally trended in the upward direction, but it's not every year that it's upward. I attribute last calendar year to a very intentional effort by the city to make cut back on the discretionary purchasing to the extent possible. The next slide shows, still on the subject of the purchasing card program, the number of transactions represented in the orange bar chart, and then the number of cardholders that the city has participating in the purchasing card program. These are all full-time employees, by the way. In addition, the purchasing office supports other departments by administering the acquisition of fuel for the city's fleet of vehicles and equipment. First slide on number 15, if we could back up, is the number of gallons purchased. And this is showing unleaded gasoline in the blue shaded portion of the bar chart and the diesel fuel in the gray blue shade. And here again, you see reduction in purchasing from last year, from calendar year 2019 to calendar year 2020. And I again attribute that to the pandemic and the effort to cut back. And slide 16, still on the subject of fleet fuel purchasing, shows the number of vehicles and equipment that we have participating in the fleet fuel purchasing program and the number of drivers. Here again, just as with the purchasing card, all of the drivers that participate are full-time, well, maybe not full-time, but employees of the city. Next, the purchasing office administers the disposal of the city's surplus personal and seized property. And this chart on slide 17 depicts in the blue the value of auctions. I'm sorry, I've got that backwards. It's the value of the net proceeds is in the orange, and then the blue shows the number of auctions we've had each year. These are auctions that are conducted online, so we don't have somebody standing out on the steps of the front door of City Hall. It's all online, and this jumps around quite dramatically from one year to the next. There's often no rhyme or reason to that. Some years we will have some high dollar inventory that we are surplusing, and then other years not so much. In the case of calendar 2020 though, I do attribute the reduction in the number of auctions and the value in part to the pandemic. And then finally, the purchasing office supports other departments by processing the requisitions that we use to document the basis for pricing and how we're accounting for the transactions. The bar chart depicts the number of requisitions that are processed each year. On slide 19, we present our complicated organizational chart. There are 3 of us in the office. There are 4 positions shown. The shaded position, Procurement Officer 1, is vacant. In the area of personnel, we are not asking for much of a difference from one fiscal year to the next, about 1.3%. In the area of operations, it's a slight reduction. The percentage is sort of meaningless because the dollars aren't very significant. I'm going to turn now to our program enhancement requests for fiscal year 22. We have 4. The first one has to do with e-procurement or electronic procurement. The goal of an electronic procurement system is to improve service to the departments and vendors with the electronic distribution of solicitations, preparation and submittal of bids, receipt of bids, tabulation and posting of bid tabulations. The benefits of the e-procurement system would be to increase capacity and time savings of the purchasing office, improved effectiveness and accuracy of the tabulation and posting of bid tabulations, and would benefit the vendors by having paper bids and proposals replaced with the more convenient electronic submission tool, which would have controls built in that would help guide the vendors to submit a complete submittal and proposal. Our second enhancement request has to do with OnBase. OnBase is the system that the city uses for electronic archiving of documents of all types, including resolutions and ordinances, contracts, but the purchasing office's focus is on the supporting documentation for purchasing card transactions. Included in the enhancement request for OnBase is also a component for the finance department having to do with AP workflow, and Mike Lowe will address that momentarily. But in the case of the purchasing office, we are currently manually scanning and indexing the supporting documentation, and that's a time-consuming, labor-intensive process. And it also imposes on each card holder the need to print, sort, and submit the printed documentation. For the approximately 20,000 transactions per year currently charged by the city's 450 cardholders, the manual process takes an estimated 40 hours per month for one purchasing office staff person. Replacing the manual process with an automated process would allow purchasing to dedicate some of this time for other priorities of the city, and it would be less burdensome on the cardholder since it would also replace the need to print, sort, and submit the printed documentation with an electronic matching and submittal process. I might note that the OnBase software that the city already owns includes the capability to automate the scanning and indexing process. This enhancement request includes funding for consulting services necessary to implement the automated process, for consulting services necessary to implement an optional integration of OnBase with our accounting system. Likewise, consulting services for the finance component having to do with accounts payable workflow. And then finally, for additional user licenses in OnBase if needed to permit more city personnel to access the program. Our third program enhancement request I've named programmable locks for our remote diesel sites. When the city needs to refill the diesel tanks at for our backup power generators, some of these sites are unstaffed. For example, the two-way radio towers, the water management department has lift stations around the city. And so it's problematic for the truck driver delivering the diesel fuel to gain access to the site. And switching out the locks to an electronic lock that can be controlled remotely will alleviate that difficulty. And our final enhancement request has to do with document warehousing. And this amount represents an estimate by our facilities manager and is would be for the cost for the departments that currently use our archives in the city-owned Five Points building for them to have their documents moved and maintained by an office records management company. So in conclusion, I want to say thank you to the team that makes the purchasing function work for the city. Each year, the purchasing office asks the city to observe the month of March as procurement month. And by the way, happy procurement month. And Mayor Moore is kind enough to proclaim it so. That proclamation describes how the procurement function for the city is a team effort, and its success depends upon the efforts and cooperation of the city's elected and appointed officials, department heads, departmental purchasing agents, engineering, facilities, fleet, and purchasing staff, the Tennessee Department of General Services Central Procurement Office, and importantly, the community of suppliers, service providers, and contractors that seek to do business with the city. So on behalf of the purchasing office staff, I want to say thank you to each member of this team that strives to make public procurement successful for the city of Franklin. Thank you so much for your time, and I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Any questions from any committee member or Brian? I do have one, but I'll hold that for a second or two and give anyone else that has a question. So we still have city records over in the 5 Points in the basement. I think that's probably $30,000 expenditure that would be well spent to take care of those.
And I would tell you there's probably more that needs to be done and a broader base in terms of, and we've been chipping away at some of the conversion to electronic documents on a number of things, but this is probably a broader project. I appreciate Brian identifying it, but it's probably IT, our admin recorders office group, and others working through this. So it's identified as something we need to work on.
Yeah, I noticed that my file cabinet went away years ago. Any other questions of Brian? If not, then let's go to the budget presentation of finance. I understand Michael Walters Young is ill today or sick today, and we will have Mike Lowe do that presentation. And Christine, do you want to start out?
I believe Mike is ready to pinch hit, and I'll help him as he would like.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Lowe. I am the city's comptroller. I will cover the presentation today, including personnel, operations, and enhancement request. As you said, Mr. Chairman, Michael was not able to be here today, but Christine may have some additional comments at the end of the presentation. We will follow the standard format for our presentation, which is on this slide. And next slide, please. In addition to assisting with the budget and providing reports to this committee, the finance department performs the city's accounting and financial reporting. We invest funds, we reconcile the city's bank accounts, we issue employee payroll and vendor payments, and also ensure that the annual audit is conducted. Next slide, please. During 2021, we had a vacancy in the financial manager position. Margaret Wilson, who was a financial analyst, was promoted to the financial manager, and we are currently in the process of hiring the vacant analyst position. Next slide, please. There is no request to change in personnel. We have 9 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions. An intern position remains unbudgeted. And there is a $5,000 increase from 2021 to 2022. I believe the slide says decrease, but that should be an increase. And some personnel costs, like medical and retirement, may actually decrease in 2022. Next slide, please. There is an $8,000 increase in operations from 2021 to 2022. This increase is scheduled equipment replacements. And also something that's included in finance operations are charges for banking services and advisory services for investments and bond compliance. One cost, though, that's not in the finance department is the cost of the annual audit, and that is split under general expenses in the general fund and the water sewer fund. So that kind of covers, I guess, personnel and operations. Next slide, please. For the program enhancement, we have 2 individual enhancement requests and 1 shared request, which Brian mentioned during the purchasing presentation. The first one is the replacement of budget software. The software the city has used since fiscal year 2012 is no longer supported by Microsoft. And without that support, we are having to reach out to third parties for assistance. The second enhancement request is the copier within the finance department. It is going to be out of warranty, and once out of warranty, it becomes more difficult to find replacement parts. And so that's the 2 individual enhancement requests. And as was mentioned, the third request is actually goes back to scanning. Is this would allow documents that have been scanned, documentation, to actually be able to be seen within the city's accounting system. So that is why it's kind of been shared with purchasing. It kind of not only would help purchasing cards, but it would help in the accounts payable process also. Next slide, please. In conclusion, I guess as far as the finance department, we would like to highlight 3 things. Is for the 29th consecutive year, we have received the Government Finance Officer's Certificate of Achievement for financial reporting. For 12 consecutive years, we have gotten their award for budgeting. And from the 2020 audit, we had no audit findings. Mr. Chairman, that was the end of the Finance Department presentation.
Any questions of Mike or Christine, either one, from any committee member? Any additional comments? Christine?
I thank Mike for taking the entire presentation, but he and Michael work very well together in day-to-day leadership of the finance department, and I enjoy working with them. We also have Angelique Franzoni with us. She supported the entire budget process, and she supports all the departments, but I want to also thank her as she is with us, of course, here on the finance department presentation, as well as the entire staff of the finance department. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, let's go to item 11, consideration of resolution 2021-38. It is a resolution authorizing and directing the Industrial Development Board of the City of Franklin to prepay a portion of its taxable tax increment revenue refunding bonds, Series 2015A, variable rate for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Christine?
Yes, this one is me, and I'm enjoying, even though we're not here together, seeing Alderman Peterson smile so much, because all of our aldermen have been supporters of this initiative, but Alderman Peterson's very happy this afternoon. This is a resolution that it is asking the Finance Committee to recommend to the full board a prepayment of $1.2 million on the principal of the 2015 tax increment financing loan, which the city requested to be issued by the Industrial Development Board. This loan that was originally issued in 2005 and refinanced in 15, we beginning back in 2018 began to have revenues, property tax revenues within the TIF district that exceeded the debt service. And since 18, we've had an annual prepayment of principal. Supposing that the board does approve this $1.2 million, we will have prepaid $3.2 million over a 4-year period. And I would be able to report that at the end of this fiscal year, we would have about $1.4 million in principal left. And that most likely I would expect that this time next year, we would tweak this resolution a little bit to prepay the entire loan off. So that would be paying this loan off 3 years earlier than expected, a little more than 3 years earlier. And just, I did have some details in the report to you, but the property tax revenues within the TIF district this year were exceeded the $2.5 million for the first time. That was a 9.3% increase from last year. So we do, I'd certainly be glad to answer any questions you might have, but we appreciate the support of this committee to prepay this loan early.
Then let's get a motion, and I'm sure that we'll have some comments and questions on that. I'll entertain a motion to approve, to approve resolution 2021-38. And is that correct, in the amount of $1,200,000?
Yes, sir. That's the request.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Ann, do you have any comments?
I do. So then by next year, probably with the extra that we're getting, we'll pay it off. And that means that then this TIF district money will then go into our regular general fund?
Yes, ma'am. That there will be some logistics in that we will actually need to leave the TIF open for 1 more year because we do owe the general fund back $2.3 million from debt service that was advanced early on in the program. Now, it's a little bit semantic because certainly that money does belong to the general fund, but we will leave the TIF accounting open for 1 more year and then show that as being captured within the general fund. So your explanation is correct, Alderman Peterson, but we will have to leave the mechanics of the TIF open for fiscal 23.
Alderman Speedy or Alderman Shore, do you have any questions?
My only question would be is if we didn't prepay the note down, what could we do with those other funds? I mean, it's great that we're doing it, but I also see we're only paying less than 1% on that note. Are there other notes at 3 or 4% that we could pay down earlier? I don't know.
Well, we actually can't. We have an agreement that was between the industrial board and the city that additional revenues had to be used to repay us back that $2.3 million or to prepay the loan down. We really can't, until both sides are satisfied, we can't use that money for anything else. So, but it is close to us, and certainly that we are in we did have fixed rate debt on the 2015, and we paid that off, and then we've been, the only was left was the variable rate, and of course the LIBOR rates have been very low, but we are obligated to keep that TIF structure until we pay ourselves back.
And after we complete that and pay off all that, then we will have paid for the things that the TIF was started for, which was to buy the property of for the Nissan plant. And so that means that once this is taken care of, it sounds like now maybe at least a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, then that money will go into our property tax.
Yes, ma'am. Once we get through that period of accounting, right, making sure all the accounting is straight with the TIF and paying ourselves back, it will become a regular property tax revenue that still has been collected by the county trustee on our behalf, but we have to segregate it for this purpose because that's what it was intended for. But it is still part of our regular property tax. It will become part of our regular property tax accounting after that point.
So we would not only then generate this income, hopefully next year or the year after, but we've also got the half-cent sales tax that we would be getting that we were putting off and giving to the Williamson County School Board for 3 years. So we've got two sources of income that, I mean, I don't want to use the word significant, but are certainly significant coming on board with this year and maybe next year.
Yes, so the timing for the end of the school sales tax is a little closer than the TIF loan. That actually is later in the next couple of months is when the school sales tax program ends. And we'll actually have the first 3 months of collections in this current fiscal year. And we'll be doing, I don't want to project exact dollars, but certainly in fiscal 22, we will begin kind of the phase down on the TIF loan. And then in 23, you'll start seeing that be able to be as part of the city's general fund. But the accounting end will start in fiscal 22 to end the TIF loan.
Any other questions or comments? Then, I did get a motion in a second. We need to do a roll call vote on this item as far as sending it to the full board. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes. And the chair has learned that when he votes, it mutes him. So now he understands quickly to unmute himself. Okay, let's go to item 12 then. And that is consideration of draft ordinance 2021-03, an ordinance to amend Appendix A, Comprehensive Fees and Penalties, Chapter 17, Municipal Solid Waste Disposal to update the administrative setup fee for curbside recycling. Jack Tucker or Mark? Jack, which one of you want to lead us in this discussion?
I'll take this one on, Alderman Barnhill. Appreciate your time on a busy agenda this afternoon. A little over a year ago, we rolled out the automated curbside recycling program, better known as the Blue Bin program. Our initial goal was to establish 10,000 accounts in the first year, and we've far exceeded it. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of 13,400, which we're really, really excited about. One of the elements to the rollout was charging an administrative setup fee to offset administrative costs that the city would incur. We had settled in on $48. And at the time, there was a concern that a one-time charge may prohibit or present a financial obstacle for some to actually join the program. So we established a 12-month fee at $4 a month. We've had it implemented that way for the past 15 months or so. One of the things that we're running into is that in order to have an ongoing payment from the customer is that they have to have accounts set up in order to have that monthly bill established. So in the way why we wanted to do it automatically is we expected a great number of citizens to embrace the program and sign up. And so we sought to do this as automatically as possible. One of the things we're seeing now, though, there are some neighborhoods, and I'll use Prescott Place in Fieldstone Farms. They have the individual homeowners in that subdivision don't have individual accounts. It's a master meter, and their bills get split out by the HOA account holder in that case. So without an account, it prevents us from going through this sign up process with Bluebin. So what we're looking at, or what we'd like to request, since we've established the program, I think, very well, we'd like to go back to a one-time $48 administrative setup fee charge. We've heard feedback from a number of customers, they prefer it that way, but we feel that we're established to the point where that would be appropriate at this time. And I'll try to answer any questions or provide any other feedback as you see fit.
Let's do it this way. Let's get a motion and a second, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So do I have a motion of draft ordinance 2021-03? And that motion would be to recommend to the full board the acceptance of this ordinance.
So moved.
Proper motions are a second?
Second.
I think I did hear a second. Then let's open it up for discussion. I know that I think I was maybe the one that recommended the $4 per month for 12 months fee. And so if we've got people who are not in the system well enough that they could pay the $4, I don't have a problem personally with billing each that home or that homeowner for $48 for the blue recycling bin that they have, and allowing them to participate in the program. But again, any questions from any of the other aldermen on this item?
I just to get it straight. So there's a group of whatever, maybe part of a homeowner or something that aren't paying anything, and so they don't have the recycling program available to them. Is that correct? And this would enable them to do that?
Yes, sir. So there are a handful of communities in Franklin where, again, it's typically related with a master meter situation.
I get it. That's all I need. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other questions on this draft ordinance? If not, I'll do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes. And let's go to item 13 then, the financial report for second quarter of fiscal year 2021. Mike, you want to carry this?
Yes. Back in the first quarter of the year, the general fund had a slight surplus when normally there would have been a deficit. This was due to one-time grant revenue of $1.8 million from the governor's state grant and $1.1 million from the CARES grant. Here in the second quarter, with property tax billings, this surplus has increased. If you took into account the $2.9 million of grant revenue and excluded it, it would show that the surplus would be slightly less than $4 million. For the year, local sales tax is 2.4% higher year to date through December. And this is in comparison to months still before the pandemic. And for the month of December, local sales tax was actually up 6.2%. Being the highest amount of the fiscal year, this was a good sign. For development fees, where we had saw lower amounts in October, November, we started to see increases again in December and January. And these revenues, again, are dependent on timing and type of development. Continuing the trend from the first quarter, gasoline taxes do remain lower by 4% with less travel that is occurring at the moment. In the transit fund, it has used all of its budgeted subsidy for 2021, and this amount is expected to go back down when grant revenue comes in during the remainder of the fiscal year. In the hotel motel tax fund, which has been the hardest hit by the pandemic, hotel motel tax revenue is over 50% less. At this point, we have under $1 million in collection versus last year having $2 million in collections at this point. And the conference center has a cumulative loss through December of $200,000. Last meeting, Alderman Schroer, you had a question about number of hotel rooms, and the hotel motel tax form itself does not include number of rooms, but the B&S department shows there were 19 hotels and almost 3,000 rooms added in Franklin since September of 2007, and half of these rooms have been added since 2015. And maybe the last highlight from the report, and it's a new item, is we've now received the first month of sports betting revenue, and that amount is $9,000. We know that it's based on per capita and not actual specific betting that's occurring. And MTAS has actually mentioned to us that the budgeting for this might actually be approximately $1 per capita in a fiscal year. That was the highlights I had from the report. If the committee has any other questions, or if Christine or Eric had any additional comments they wanted to make.
Well, I like to ask if my colleague Angie could pull up the report. And this is just, I just love the front cover of this report. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it in your fleeting moments, but I really enjoy the front cover of this quarterly report. And I may have to ask Mark Hilty to tell us the background, but the Bumble Pusher from Christmas is captured in the front cover. And we've got Cornelius, I think, at the wheel, and the Bumble is on the top. So I just want, that's not an accounting reference, but I did want to point that out. I hope someone else saw it and enjoyed it as much as I did.
This is from our lighting extravaganza at Eastern Flank that we did right at Christmas. That was extremely well received by the public, and the cover's nice, but the numbers inside are good too. So it's a positive report, and appreciate Mike and the finance team for their work and keeping good track of this, and our departments for their stewardship.
Thank you, Mike, and we appreciate the report. It's interesting to me that you have month to month, December to December, 6% better last December than the December before that. But that's excellent news on our part and on the city's part. Any other questions? Any questions from any committee member of Mike on the report?
I just got a quick question. Did they break down sales tax revenue by, can we know how much comes from online sales as it reports to physical sales? And I'd love to see, I had a conversation actually just yesterday with former Governor Haslam, who put in who got past the sales tax, internet sales tax thing. He was bragging a little bit on how effective that was, and I certainly had to agree. But I'd love to see just in Franklin how that's growing and what impact maybe did the difference really come from that more so than it did from anything else. And I think that'd be good information not only for us to have, but it'd be good information to share to the public that online sales tax is an important part of what we have nowadays. And we didn't have it, 6 years ago, however long it was.
Well, it's been just a I guess, kind of a cascading story about how, first of all, even the collection of online sales tax, how it's evolved, but then also how it's been reported, and then what we as locals are allowed to see. And I will share with you, Alderman Shore, that until this last change, we had a line, and we still do have a line called out-of-state sales that Mike Lowe and I can see. And we see that every month. However, in this last go around, actually the state, we know the state is collecting more, and they're collecting in more areas of online sales. They actually started last fall collecting another area of online sales that they never had before. However, if a store has bricks and mortar, such as like a Target or a Walmart, they are now putting that into the big lump that we can't differentiate. And that used to probably be there, but it was in the out-of-state sales. So when you look at our out-of-state sales line, it's actually gone down in the last 6 to 9 months. However, and we were very concerned about that. We got with Department of Revenue and said, what's happened? We know our people are buying online. Well, those revenues were getting pushed into a big category that we can't differentiate because they have bricks and mortar presence. So there's a little bit of this that we're having to just rely that revenue is putting those revenue, putting that sales tax where they should. But certainly it has been it's been a frustration of ours because we can't see that specifically. And the only line that is specific has not really been reflective of what the collections have been. And that's what that's the conclusions Mike and Eric and I have come to, because we wish that out-of-state sales line could say it's gone up by 5% or 10%, but it's actually gone down because some of the very, very large online presence, whether you have and I will say that would be a bricks and mortar, whether you have a store or perhaps if you have warehouses or other types of operations in Tennessee, that's been moved to a different category, different reporting category.
It would be interesting. I know the state does what the state's going to do, but it would be interesting. You can walk through the malls and the Targets and the world, and that if our sales tax revenue has gone up, it's gone up through online sales. It hadn't gone up through person-to-person sales. So I'm going to put kudos in for Governor Haslam for getting that passed, and it's made a big difference to cities like Franklin and across the state. So anyway, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm proud to be a part of it when it happened. So.
Alderman Peterson, Alderman Speedy, you have any questions?
No questions.
If not, then let's go to item 14, which is monthly reports for March 2021. Mike, you're up again.
From the monthly reports, I have maybe 3 additional highlights. Is for developer fees, even though they have been less than last year, the budget took the lower collections into account when the budget was developed. So that's how come you're seeing lower actual, but higher compared to budget. The second point is, like lower hotel motel tax collections, the conference center has had a deficit in each month of the fiscal year. And the last highlight is, and it's in the area of grants, one new item is now the passage of the Federal Economic Recovery Act. And within it, included $360 billion of state and local assistance, with 230 million for state governments and 130 billion for local governments. So as we start seeing some more of those details come out, we'll have an impact probably coming from that at some point here soon.
I've just got a quick question. I could ask it from anybody, but do we have any debt that we're paying anymore on the convention center? Has that been paid off?
It was retired maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that. We retired ours, and then a few years later, the county has now retired its debt on it. So that is paid off. The renovations they did a few years ago was entirely funded through the reserve fund that had accumulated over time. So really, overall, when you look at the big picture, it has worked really, really well in terms of being a great asset in the community, but also financially, it is done pretty well, and especially compared to those sorts of local meeting centers, for it to be generally self-sustaining is unusual. So this year, of course, has been an exception because of the impact of the pandemic, but its debt has retired, and it has done a nice job of being a positive cash flow for us.
Well, when your hotel motel tax is down 50% in a year, you know that's got a hugely impact the convention.
Mm-hmm.
No more questions.
Any other questions from any of the other committee members to Mike referencing the monthly reports? Then let's go to other business. Any other business for the committee? I don't see anyone jumping in on any other business. Let's go to the next item on the agenda, which is adjourn. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yeah, I may get my nap in after all. Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are adjourned.